This is the Football Podcast with your hosts, Tyler, Andy, and Boyer.
Welcome to this broadcast from Off the Wall Sports. Wait, what? Am I on the wrong one? Oh, yeah, that
wrong channel.
Wrong one. All right, so this is another podcast from the Fantasy Football League, hosted by two of your performance-enhancing dads. The other dad, Ty, is not sick. That's my job. He is on vacation, enjoying life, kicking back with two kids in tow. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, he's dadding it up in Disney right now. So good
Right.
work being a dad, Ty.
Andy, how are you feeling tonight?
I am a little older than I was last week, so got some aches and pains, but we'll get there.
All right, well, that's
And you're alive.
As dads. So how's that dad bod going? You trying to knock it down to a
It's
normal
filling
dad
out. The holidays really help with the dad bod situation. So
bod? All right, well, I think we are here to talk about the championship and the general anger of the entire league and how the championship has come to play. It's Robbie and Jeremy. Let's start with just general feelings on Robbie. We won't go too far. I think we've beaten that horse a little dead over the course of the last few weeks. But Andy, give me your thoughts. Don't hold back.
So I've shit on Robbie's team a lot this year. Robbie, I don't think deserves to be in the playoffs. But with the division that he was in and the wins that he stacked early in the year and some timely other wins and some help from Boyer beating Fryer, he backed his way into the playoffs. But to his credit, he friggin' crushed it last week. Now, he was playing Colin, so he didn't really have to do much of anything because, oh no, he wasn't. I had that backwards. Jeremy played Colin. Colin put up 65 points. So Jeremy had the easy week. But Paul was playing Robbie, and Robbie put up 132 points. And Fryer, who would have been my pick to be the better team to be in playoffs, he put up a good old 71 points. So good job, acting like you belong, Robbie. No imposter syndrome over there. He is playing the part of a playoff team. Colin, on the other hand, I don't know what he's doing. So good work. He's got a coin flip shot at a second title here. Robbie would be the only member of the league besides myself to win the title multiple times if he pulls it off. Jared's trying for his first one, so should be interesting.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of parallels between what my teams have done and the lucky years that they've had and what Robbie's doing this year. I think that Robbie's done better than what I've been able to do in previous years because he got Burrow, he got Amon St. Brown, he made some timely waiver wire pickups, especially later in the season once he did quote unquote back into the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And he got some guys that have been hot. Maybe it leads him to a championship, maybe not, but it got him here. So I mean, those are moves that we can't discount just because his team didn't look great, got carried by Derrick Henry, then without him looked terrible, and he just kind of got into it. He's made some moves that have actually helped, and to his credit, he stayed active and kept pushing for playoffs, and it worked out.
Yeah, I know we talked quite a bit about how we felt like Robbie didn't do enough buying at the deadline to bolster his team, but I mean, you nailed it. Amon St. Brown has been a revelation for his team. He's been getting 10 points a week, if not 16 with the touchdown. So he's been doing a ton of work for Robbie's team these last 4 weeks. Joe Burrow was insane last week and has been pretty steady for him, which is great timing because Russell Wilson came back and has been very disappointing. So Robbie made those moves on the waiver wire, and we didn't appreciate them at the time because when Jeremy went out and bought Tyreek Hill and Robbie picked up Amon St. Brown, we were like, well, Robbie doesn't care. He's not trying. He's just hoping to hold on to his lead and get lucky in the playoffs, but it's working for him.
Yeah. So on the flip side, I'm going to start with just my thoughts on Jeremy here in the championship. Man, I'm rooting for this guy. I mean, he's put together a hell of a league. He's had a lot of ups and downs, more downs than ups throughout the first 10 years. It's nice to see him in the championship. He's put together some good teams that could have gotten there before, and he didn't get there. He's had some bad luck in other years. So it's nice to see him put together a really good team, and that includes wasting money on Allen Robinson, wasting money on Gus Edwards, those type of players, and still having a fantastic team. So
Yeah, that's
kudos to Jeremy for
great
putting together a great team and sticking with it.
Because I went back, I wanted to rag on Robbie a little bit this week, as the commissioner requested that it was hate on Robbie week or whatever he called it. So I wanted to go back to Robbie's draft and hate on some of his boneheaded picks, right? Well, I went and looked, and if you look at Robbie's draft, he didn't overpay for anybody. He got Thielen for $23. He got Josh Jacobs for $41. He got Myles Gaskin for $21. He got Derrick Henry for $73. I feel like with the production that he got out of each of those guys, and granted, Derrick Henry went down halfway through the season, but for the wins that he got you all on his own, I think that he was worth the $73. You would have liked to have gotten more, but you look at some of the other guys people spent $73 on. I don't think Kamara was worth it. Saquon certainly wasn't worth it. Those guys weren't quite $73, but you get my point. Like, Derrick Henry did work for you when he was playing. And I went up and down. I mean, maybe one of the biggest miss is Russell Wilson for 11, Tyler Higbee for 9. Like, the guy nailed it. And then he had Damian Harris as a dollar keeper. Robbie, top to bottom in the draft, was not a draft that I cared for at the time, but it worked for him. He didn't have very many misses, and when he did miss, I mean, Josh Jacobs for 41, maybe a miss, but not a big one. He's been healthy. He's been productive. Even if he's not returning all of that value, it wasn't a miss. And then you go over to Jeremy's team, and Jeremy, like we've said, has had to make some moves because he had Allen Robinson for $40. He had Gus Edwards for $41. That's a third of his draft money there. And granted, Jeremy had quite a bit of draft money. Going into the draft, he had Justin Jefferson for $1, which has been huge for him. But Jeremy had some misses that took up a big chunk of his budget, and he had to go and he flipped. Was it Godwin and Henderson, and got back Zeke early in the season from Charlie, and then went and added Tyreek Hill. So Jeremy's made moves and had to spend some of his next year's money to bolster his team, and Robbie didn't have to do that because he made some smart waiver wire moves that none of us appreciated. But now they're both here, two very different paths.
Yeah. So with that being said, let's go into the matchup this year for the championship. Jeremy versus Robbie. I'll take quarterbacks if you don't mind, Andy.
Absolutely. I know nothing about quarterbacks.
So quarterbacks in this matchup, Robbie's slinging out Joe Burrow against KC, and Jeremy's got Murray against Dallas. Give me a breakdown on those quarterbacks.
I mean, it should be hopefully a couple of shootouts if we're all happy fantasy football fans here. Burrow against Kansas City, I think, is going to be an exciting game. The Bengals have definitely surprised some people. Their offense have been moving the ball and doing really well, especially of late. And then Kansas City's obviously the number 1 seed currently. So Cincinnati'd like to get a statement win going into what they expect to be a playoff berth, and Joe Burrow is going to have to be the one that does that. Now on the flip side, Kyler Murray, their Cardinals are dealing with 3 straight losses. They're 1-3 since Murray came back after the bye, which is not good. They only beat the Bears. You're looking at about 250 yards passing a week in that time, only 1 passing touchdown a week. He's got 3 picks in those 4 games. So Kyler Murray as a quarterback hasn't really done it. Last week, he was saved by 74 yards on the ground. That's where a third of his production came from. So I don't know how much is, Murray dealing with some lingering injuries. I don't know how much of it is just the fact that DeAndre Hopkins is gone, and losing your number 1 weapon makes a big difference. If it's a mixture of both, the defensive schemes they've been seeing, I don't know what it is, but Kyler Murray has not looked like an elite quarterback in this league since he came back. And then Dallas could go one of two ways. Dallas is a bunch of ball hawks, but that means they give up some yardage too. So if Kyler Murray is able to take advantage of that, he could have a big game even if he does have a couple of picks. But looking at what he's done in these last 4 games since he came back off the injury, I don't know that I'm buying that. He's going to have to get it done with his legs. Kyler Murray's definitely a guy you want to bet on his legs if there is one in the league, but I'm going to give the edge to Robbie here. I like Burrow in that Kansas City matchup.
Yeah, so I'm a little more nervous about that Kansas City matchup. That defense has allowed, I think, less than like 10 points in like 6 straight weeks or something stupid, or 5 out of 6. Their defense has really picked it up. Their offense has put up over 30 points over their last 6 contests or something as well. Mahomes is doing much, much better than he was in the beginning of the year. Still has a few more interceptions than we're normally seeing him, but he's getting it done to the point where they're putting up points. So with that being said, I would like to see a shootout. I think we're gonna see if the Bengals are for real in this game. But I'm kind of with you on Kyler Murray. He looks lost. He looks confused when he's out there. Like he doesn't know where routes are going. He does have Christian Kirk and Rondale Moore. If they can get either one of those going deep down the field, going vertical against the Cowboys defense, that's where they are susceptible.
Sure.
So that's what they're going to have to do. Last game, I think they were missing like James Conner, which does hurt them not being able to run the ball. James Conner's also been quite a bit of a safety blanket for Kyler Murray in the passing game, surprisingly, this year as well. So I think he'll help. But I think I will lean towards Burrow. He has so many weapons. Like as good as Kansas City's defense has been, how do you stop Mixon, Chase, Higgins, and Boyd all at the same time? Uzoma's no slouch. Their offensive line has improved. Burrow himself can run when he needs to. So I think Burrow probably gets the slight edge. I'm not banking on either one of these guys just going off and completely winning them the week by themselves. I think it'll be pretty even, but I think Burrow gets the slight edge here.
Yeah, so a couple of quick notes on that because I know Kamish likes the stats. So James Conner has 14 touchdowns on the year. Last year, Kyler Murray, I think, had 10 or 11 as a quarterback because they didn't run the ball in the red zone last year. Kenny Drake, not known for being a red zone runner. And then Chase Edmonds, also not a red zone runner. So last year, it was all Kyler Murray in the red zone. That was where a big bulk of his production came from, 10 touchdowns, 60 fantasy points. And this year, that has not been as common because they have James Conner to punch it in when they get down there. So that's definitely a risk when Conner's healthy. It helps the offense as a whole, but if that means that Kyler's less likely to get that rushing touchdown, then that's going to hurt some of the upside. Then you mentioned that the Kansas City defense has been hot since the bye. They've allowed 12, 10, 23, and a combined like 9.5 because Roethlisberger and Rudolph both got some throws in that game. But the 23 was to Justin Herbert. And the other quarterbacks they played since then are Teddy Bridgewater, Derek Carr, and then the Pittsburgh combo there. So haven't really faced stiff competition. That said, the only reason Justin Herbert had 23 points was because he managed a rushing touchdown. Beyond that, he was 236, 2 touchdowns and a pick. So not a strong passing game. The game before the bye, Dak threw 216, no touchdowns, 2 picks, nothing on the ground, lost a fumble for 2.64 fantasy points. They have not allowed anyone over 20 fantasy points aside from the Justin Herbert game in week 15 since week 5. So Kansas City's defense against the quarterback was really bad early on. Lamar Jackson put up 32, Justin Herbert put up 31, Jalen Hurts put up 28, Josh Allen put up 36. But they've given up 5 rushing touchdowns to quarterbacks. So there's a window there if Burrow can sneak one in, but that's not really his game. So we'll see. I think both of these quarterbacks are in shootout game scripts, and what they do with it is going to be up to them.
Yeah, it should be fun to watch both those games, regardless. Going to running back, you want to list off what running backs we got?
Yep, and then I'll let you break it down because I talked a lot. So Jer's got Mixon and Elliott. and Robbie has Jacobs and Harris. Currently, they both have a receiver in the flex, but Jeremy also has Chase Edmonds on the bench, and yeah, I don't think that Robbie's going to play Boston Scott or Duke Johnson. So just those two guys. What do you think?
I think that this one leans pretty heavily over to Jeremy. Joe Mixon has been God this year. I think he's running back 3. He's been fantastic. Much better than what I thought he was going to be. He's avoided the injury bug for the most part, so great for him. Because of the passing game that the Bengals have, I think that's opened up a lot more space for him to run. And we always knew he had the talent. It was just a matter of whether he was going to be able to put it on the field. And in this case, he has. So I like Joe Mixon. He's got KC. KC does have a little bit more of a leakier run defense than they do a pass defense. So I like that. Ezekiel Elliott against Arizona. This Arizona Dallas and the Cincy KC game is going to play a big part in this whole matchup. But Zeke has been, I think he's been doing okay as far as his efficiency goes. I don't think he's getting as many volume carries because Pollard is taking some of that. But they're putting Zeke in a position to do well when they do give him the ball. So I like Zeke just fine. He should be okay. Jacobs is a wild card. The Indianapolis Colts defense is a tough defense, but Jacobs could go for 3 touchdowns at any point in time, so you got to watch out for that. Damian Harris, I believe Ramondre Stevenson was out last week, which is kind of what boosted Damian Harris's production up. It could be, I don't know if Stevens is coming back. I have not checked that. But if he does, then there could be more of a timeshare that brings him down a little bit. But they're against Jacksonville. So regardless, he's going to get carries. I expect, I mean, they've been run heavy for weeks and weeks and weeks now, and it's working for them. I don't expect Belichick to change that formula. So Damian Harris is a solid play. I like Jeremy's running backs a little bit more, but that's not to say there's not some boom potential as we saw last week with Robbie's options.
Yep, I agree with that. I think Jeremy's got an edge in the talent department, with Mixon and Elliott being clear, high round fantasy picks. Jacobs and Harris are getting it done. That Indy matchup for Jacobs is tough, but Damian Harris against Jacksonville could be another juicy matchup after he just got done torching the Bills defense, which is pretty strong. Getting a nice cushy matchup here against the Jags could also be pretty productive. So I give the edge to Jeremy, but Robbie's definitely got a window here to keep up with Jay in the running back department.
Yeah, so we'll go to wide receivers, and I'm just going to list them off with flex because you can move these guys around to wherever you want. Robbie's got Amari Cooper, Darnell Mooney, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, probably the greatest name in sports right now. And then Jeremy's got Tyreek Hill, Tyler's favorite Tyler Lockett. Good thing he's not here today, and Justin Jefferson. What do you think about those 2 groups?
So it's a bummer for Robbie to lose Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen's not a name that I've ever gotten super excited about, but dude has 10 touchdowns on the year, and you can't argue with that. Mooney's definitely got upside, but he's not a touchdown guy. And then looking at Amari Cooper has not been super great. Had 85 and a touchdown last week, had 8 yards the week before. So, in a game where they scored 56 points, 85 yards and the touchdowns enough. You're glad he got a piece of that, but he's not been incredibly productive since he missed a couple of games with the COVID. But this last week was his most productive week since then. Amon-Ra St. Brown, as we mentioned, has been on a tear last 4 weeks. He's been averaging 11.5 targets, almost 9 catches, about, I'd say, 85 yards, and he's got a touchdown in 3 of 4. So most of his production on the year has come in these last 4 games, which is great for him. But you look at the other side, Tyreek Hill is an elite fantasy wide receiver. Justin Jefferson is an elite fantasy wide receiver. Tyler Lockett has some serious boom bust potential. I don't know that Detroit's pass defense is great or awful. So I'm not going to try to guess on that matchup. I'm not expecting much from Lockett, mostly because Wilson's not been great. But I mean, you look at Hill and Jefferson against any two receivers in the league, except for Paul's Cup and Debo combo, and Jeremy's got the edge. So despite some of the upside that Robbie has in Mooney and what St. Brown's been doing, got to give a solid edge here to Jeremy.
Yeah, I mean, you stated all the good things. The one thing I do want to kind of point out, Lockett's been a little less boom bust this year than he has in previous years. Going back to the bye week 9, I'm not sure exactly when Russell Wilson came back in this, but they played against Green Bay. They lost 0-17. I'm assuming that was a backup quarterback. He put up 2 points. Then he played Arizona, 11 points, Washington, 9 points, San Francisco, 12 points. Houston 22 points. The Rams he had 0, so that stinks. In Chicago he had 3. So he had a run of rather consistent double-digit, just relatively good play. And they're playing Detroit, and Detroit doesn't have a great defense. So I think that Lockett will get back on that train, probably getting close to double digits. I like him a lot. Mooney's almost guaranteed 60 to 80, but not much more than that unless he gets a couple touchdowns. So looking at that matchup alone, I like Lockett. And then between the other two, it's Tyreek and Justin Jefferson, like you said, all day. So yeah, I think sure. Up and down, Jeremy's got just too much juice at that position right now. It's a huge strength for him.
Yep. Couldn't agree more, which transitions very nicely into the next position we're going to talk about, which is tight end. Where do you prefer in general, the number 1 fantasy tight end or Gerald Everett?
It's really close, but I think I'm going to lean towards Gerald Everett. I mean, the number 1 tight end.
Good choice.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, Mark Andrews going into the season was pretty touchdown dependent, but currently leads the league in yards for a tight end. He's just shy of 1,200. He also leads all tight ends with 9. He's tied with Hunter Henry and Dawson Knox in the yards department, or in the touchdowns department with 9. So Mark Andrews, stud fantasy tight end.
Mark Andrews, if I remember right, had a little bit of a slower start. He didn't look like he was number 1 tight end for the first 6 or so weeks of the year, and then started being leaned on really heavily, especially as injuries piled up to the Ravens. They've had some injuries and COVID with their wide receivers, and Andrews has been just absolutely consistently fantastic since. And I don't think they're going to stop that. They're right in the playoff race. They got to keep beating that guy because that's how they're winning football games.
Yeah, for sure. He didn't score a touchdown until week 5. He didn't have more than 5 catches in any of those first 4 games, but since then has been very strong. Now, not to discredit what Robbie's done here and some of these moves that he's made, Gerald Everett in his last 3 games, 8.8, 6, and 12.8 fantasy points. So averaging right around, I'd say 9 fantasy points in these last 3 games. He's going to need a touchdown to get it done. Everett doesn't have more than 4 catches in any of those games. He doesn't have more than 5 catches in a game, except for he had 8 against Green Bay in a week where the Seahawks got shut out. So I think that Gerald Everett's upside is very much capped. His downside is he doesn't score a touchdown. So you're just hoping for one of those touchdowns. I think he's got 4 or 5 on the year, which, I mean, you're hoping for a touchdown to be able to keep up with Mark Andrews. And that's if Mark Andrews doesn't get a touchdown, because Mark Andrews is going to get 80 yards, could get 120 yards. He could get 0 touchdowns. He could get 2 touchdowns, whereas Everett is locked in at about 40 yards. And then you're hoping to get a touchdown and hit the double digits on your week, but that's no guarantee. So solid edge here to Jeremy.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm going to touch base a little bit on kicker and defense, just since we are going more in depth on championship week for these teams. Looks like Robbie's got the Buffalo kicker going against Atlanta, and Jeremy's got Suckup, the Bucks kicker, going up against the Jets. So 2 kickers, both on good offenses, playing against bad teams. We know that kickers can be kind of a crapshoot, but I expect that to be pretty even just based off of the fact that they both have offenses that can move the ball, and they're both playing against bad teams. So the chances are is that they won't get a ton of opportunities. They'll probably get a field goal, maybe 2 each, make their extra points. And I don't anticipate either of these kickers, making the week for either of these teams.
Yep, I agree. I think I don't like kickers in a really bad matchup. That's not something that I'm excited about because there's going to be a lot of extra points, right? If the Bucks score 42 points on 6 touchdowns, that's 6 points for Suckup. Like, that's disappointing, right? So I think that's the situation that both of these kickers are in. I'm not going to advocate for this because it's a massive crapshoot, but if I'm Robbie, I'm considering getting another kicker to swing for the fences, but Bass has been a stud kicker for him early in the season, but if you look at his game log, Bass hasn't had double-digit fantasy points since week 8. He's been down quite a bit, just in terms of his overall output. I don't know what the weather looks like in Buffalo. That's something else to keep an eye on. Suckup gets to play in the Dome in Jersey, so slight edge to Jeremy here in the kicker department, but I'm not excited about either of these guys. We're looking at a pretty solid floor, but not a lot of ceiling because I can't imagine that they're kicking a lot of field goals in these games.
Yeah, I agree. And then looking at defenses, we got the Buffalo defense against Atlanta and New England against Jacksonville. So again, pretty good matchups for both. Probably given the edge to New England against Jacksonville, just because that's a prime matchup that you want with a great defense against historically at this point bad offense.
Yeah, for sure. Looking at the opponents, Atlanta gives up the 3rd most points to fantasy defenses, but Jacksonville gives up the most, so that's a slight edge to Jeremy there. And then just in terms of which defense I prefer, New England is a much better fantasy defense. In my eyes, they actually get touchdowns here and there. They have 5 more sacks than Buffalo. They've got more picks than Buffalo. So I think I like the New England side of this better, but it's both solid defenses against bad teams. I think there's not a whole lot of separation here, but very, very tiny edge to Jeremy.
All right, so going through the bench, is there anybody that you would plug in over one of the starters that we just went over?
I don't think so. I don't feel good enough about Chase Edmonds. I mean, he got 16 carries in his game in the game against the Colts. Got the touchdown, got some receiving work. I could see an argument for putting Chase Edmonds in over Tyler Lockett. But like you pointed out, Lockett's been getting volume since Wilson came back. He's been kind of the safety blanket there. So either way, I don't feel bad about either guy. But I don't think that I'm making a switch there. Another one that we could talk about is Tampa Bay against the Jets, but I think Wilson's looked quite a bit better than he did early in the season, and I'm much more confident in New England's defense than I am Tampa Bay's defense. So I'm leaving Jared's lineup as it is. If I had to make a swap, it would be Edmonds for Lockett, but I think I'm okay with how he's got it. Anything you see on Jared's side?
Yeah, nothing that I could really see on Jared's side. He's got his team pretty much dialed in at this point. Akers is an interesting player. You can't do it in a championship if you were to play this week. I think he's close to coming back, or he's coming back. I can't remember. He would be fun, but it's championship week, so you can't throw him in there for fun. You got to keep him out. But yeah, I think he's got his team dialed in for sure. I'd keep it just the way it is.
Yep. And then on Robbie's side of the ball, I'm not tempted at all to put Russell Wilson in against Detroit, especially given what Burrow just did last week. You couldn't pay me to make that swap. And then he's holding on to a couple of guys who are hurt in Thielen and Fournette. I don't know if that's because he thinks they might be keepers. I haven't looked at all of that because I haven't started that research yet. But if they're not, drop them, bud. Pick somebody else up. You never know what's going to happen unless you're expecting to keep both of those guys or try to trade them for draft cash in the offseason. Cut them. Get rid of them. You don't need it. But I think that the only discussion here is Higbee versus Gerald Everett. Baltimore's stats make it look like they're bad against tight ends, but that's because they got roasted by Waller and Kelsey in the first 2 weeks. CJ Uzoma had a random 3 catches for 91 yards and 2 touchdowns against them in week 7. But since the bye, they have been on lockdown against tight ends, only given up 2 touchdowns, never given up more than 50 yards in any of those games. So I'm not super excited about Higbee against the Ravens because despite the overall stats, I think the Ravens are pretty good against the tight end, and Gerald Everett's been somewhat hot lately. So that's the way I lean.
Yeah, I think after the bye, the coaching staff in Baltimore clearly made an adjustment against tight ends, and it's shown up. Higbee also just hasn't been good this year. He's not getting the ball. He's not getting really almost any volume. He'd be more of a Hail Mary, and I think Everett, he's been hot. He'll at least get you a decent floor, so I'd play him. The running backs are interesting for Robbie. Duke Johnson, who I believe was he like running back 1 last week or something stupid, if I remember right? I don't know. He had a bunch of points 1 week.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, 22 carries, 2 touchdowns, 107 yards. He had 24.7 fantasy points, but that was against the Jets.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's interesting, right? And then Boston Scott should get the majority of the workload against Washington for the Eagles. I think they've gotten over 150 yards like 6 straight weeks or something now, and that's kind of fueled some of their winning streak. So that's an interesting play to me. The question is, do you think Boston Scott has a higher ceiling than, say, a Darnell Mooney? And I don't think he does. I don't think I'd roll with that. I think they're pretty even, and I'd rather have a receiver for those long plays and more touchdowns. So I'm good with where Robbie is at. I don't think he should make any changes. To say his team is dialed in is, as best as he can, I guess. But I think these teams are where they should be. They've got their lineup set, and it should make a fun championship week.
Yep, I agree. I think I'm going to call out on Jeremy's side. The path to victory is just do what you've been doing. Like Jeremy's team, I think we just broke down pretty clearly, is stronger than Robbie's team. Robbie's team has had 2 huge weeks in the last 7 or 8 weeks, and beyond that has struggled to crack 85 points. So from Jeremy's side, Jeremy's been putting up big numbers, and aside from a scarce week here or there, Robbie really hasn't been. So Jeremy just needs to stay the course, have everything fall as expected, and he should have a comfortable win here. He's projected to win by almost 25 points. What do you see as the path to victory for Robbie? What has to go right? Is it something catastrophic on Jeremy's side? Is it multiple huge games on Robbie's side? Is it a combination? What do you think? If next week we're talking about Robbie as our champion, what happened to get him there?
Yeah, I think Burrow needs to keep doing what he's been doing, and having him on the team here versus what he had. I don't think he had Burrow or had been starting Burrow during that stretch where he wasn't scoring a lot of points. So I think Burrow will give him a much clearer floor, and Burrow's got to keep it going against KC. Amari Cooper, it would help if he didn't hit 8 yards. I'm not saying he's got to hit 14 points or whatever like he did last week. A touchdown would be nice, but he's got to get something from Amari Cooper. He's got to get something from Darnell Mooney. These guys are who could only get 30 yards or 20 yards or 8. He's got to get something from 80 yards, 90 yards. Josh Jacobs against Indianapolis probably won't do much. So I think Damian Harris here is where he's going to need to get another big game from. Damian Harris has 10 touchdowns on the year against Jacksonville. He could have another 2. So if that happens, then I think that Robbie's going to find himself right in this this matchup, really almost regardless of what Jeremy does, unless all of Jeremy's team just goes off. So, and I think Amon-Ra St. Brown's got to keep doing what he's been doing, and I think he will. So I think that his path is really going to rely on Damian Harris and Joe Burrow and auxiliary decent games from most of the rest of the team. He cannot afford to have a guy with 2 points. He just can't afford it. So if that happens, that's Robbie's main path. It'll help if Lockett has a bad game. He's had a couple bad games. He does have a better matchup, so I expect that to go up, but that doesn't mean it'll happen. And then after that, I just honestly don't really, maybe Tyreek Hill has one of his bust games. Maybe that helps Robbie out too, but I don't really see any guarantees here of anybody else not doing well, assuming they're healthy. I mean, Mixon and Elliott should get their points. Justin Jefferson should get points. They always play hard against Green Bay, and those have been some shootouts lately against Green Bay in Minnesota. So that'll be a really fun game to watch, and I expect Justin Jefferson to have points in that game. So I think that he can't rely on Jeremy to have like a really bad week, because I just don't think it's going to happen. He's got to hope that Jeremy doesn't absolutely go off, and that his players do what they're supposed to do, and he gets a couple boom guys that can keep him in it going into the last part of the weekend.
Yeah, for sure. I think the way that I see the path to victory for Robbie is less of Jeremy having downside, and Tyreek Hill can have a bad game, but he's had a few bad games lately, so I don't expect that to continue. I think Tyreek Hill's a guy who demands the ball and ought to have a big game, especially if that Bengals game becomes a shootout. Lockett can be up or down, but I think we talked about how Jeremy's got the edge even without Lockett. Kyler Murray could have a dud, and that would definitely go a long way to helping Robbie this week. But I think on Robbie's side of the ball here, the path to victory is touchdowns. I think Robbie has almost always, at least recently, structured his team around touchdown scorers, which is not how I like to build my teams, but this is clearly working for him. Josh Jacobs only has 7 touchdowns on the year. He's a guy who could have 3 touchdowns in a week. I don't expect that to happen against the Colts, but Josh Jacobs is one of those guys who's going to get touches, and he's going to get goal line touches if they get down there. So Damian Harris, same thing against the Jags. I don't expect anybody on Robbie's team, save for Burrow and maybe Cooper or Mooney, if things fall right, to have a huge yardage week. That's not how Robbie's expecting to get this done. He's hoping for a touchdown out of Everett. He's hoping that Josh Jacobs gets a touchdown or 2. He's hoping that Damian Harris gets maybe 2 or 3 touchdowns against the Jags. He's hoping that Cooper gets 1. He's hoping that Mooney gets 1. Like these are touchdown guys. Thielen's gone, and Fournette's gone, and Russell Wilson's not any good, and Derrick Henry's gone. Robbie's lost a lot this year, but he's still put together a decent team to be here that has the upside to put him in a position to compete if things fall his way. But he's at a disadvantage here. He needs those big games. He might need help on Jeremy's side. I just hope it's close. I hope it's fun. I hope that it is not. I hope it's a Robbie Paul matchup and not a Jeremy Collin matchup. Let's put it that way.
Thanks, Colin. Jeez.
Yeah, Colin, you embarrassed yourself, man.
So I think I've got Jeremy in this one.
Same.
I don't know if Robbie can rely on his team getting touchdowns, especially 2 weeks in a row when he had only been able to do it one other time in the last 6 or 7 weeks. I think Jeremy is going to get, just based off yardage, will be able to beat him. It's going to take an enormous touchdown effort from Robbie. So I agree with you there. So I got Jeremy. Jeremy, we're picking you this time. Stop whining on the chat. That was like you're in agreement. I mean, all the signs point towards Jeremy, I think.
Yep, I think that is absolutely how I feel.
All right. So going off of that, we'll just shout out some of the other matchups here. Colin and Paul, a little bit of a rematch, I think, from the last week of the regular season and the 3rd place game. I personally have Paul in that one, but if you're not first, you're last, so sucks. And then another shout out, Chris and Andy, going for the 5th place game. That's last last bit of money that will be given out. Andy, I am proud of your team. Your team has gotten a little unlucky, and you've had to work around some bad wide receivers, some running back injuries. I think you've done well to get into a position where you could. I think you could have been a playoff team if things had just bounced slightly different your way, whether that was being scored less on when you were scoring big, or if you kind of caught a couple injuries at a different time, because it does seem to be ill-timed injuries and COVID.
Hey,
Chris,
last
on
week
the other
my
hand,
entire bench was on the COVID list.
right. So Chris, on the other hand, he's been struggling lately. He was really strong in the middle of the year. So I think that'll be a fun matchup to watch. But again, 5th place. So we're all looking to the championship.
Yep, nobody's watching my game except for me, and that is fine. That is fine by me. Devontae Adams is going to destroy the Vikings. Terrible secondary that I've been ragging on all year, and I'm not going to be able to keep up with that. So I'm picking Chris against me, but we don't have to pick that matchup because nobody cares.
All right, so I think that is all we really wanted to cover here in championship week.
Oh, real quick, are you drinking
yeah.
anything?
Oh yeah, that's right.
I got nothing. So this is what happens when Ty's not here. We go off the rails.
Yep, sounds like it. So on that, we're going to take this train to the next stop, and we will see you guys after championship week once we get to crown somebody, and we'll look towards the off season. So it'll be good times. What does Tyler normally say? Fuck you, I don't care about anything, something like that.
Ty's in Disney right now, but nobody cares. I don't know. You have to pick things about the people and talk about how you don't care about those things, even though you just talked about them.
Sounds good. Well, like, subscribe if you haven't, do the commenting thing, and we'll see you guys next week once a champion is crowned. See ya.
See ya.